Hello everyone, welcome back to the Handspin Review Spot YouTube channel. If you like what we're doing here, please give us a subscription. That means a great deal to us and really helps us out. You can also go to the link in the description below, which will take you over to our Facebook page for little updates on what's going on and what we've got coming up on the channel and all that kind of good stuff. So, what have we got here today? Well, we've got quite an interesting tri-spinner, and one that I've been waiting on for some time now. I was originally contacted by the makers of this piece at Vinon Labs. I hope I'm getting that right in terms of how you pronounce the name, but I think I am. This is the Sonder, and it is very, very interesting. So before we get into it, let's move these little bits of superfluous gumph out of the way and give you a quick... Sorry, I can't stop spinning this one. And then we put a few next to it for a size comparison. So there we go with the Tri-Cocoon from Pos Blades. Instantly you can see this isn't the largest footprint for a spinner in the world, which is never a bad thing from my point of view. There we have the Turnian from NTO Designs, the Tri-Stubby from Rotorblade, who else? And then we'll stick a... There we go. There's a Crusader there as well. So as you can see, as tri-spinners go, this is relatively compact. It's quite in line with most others. And if we take all of these out of the way quickly and stick it next to an old school bearing wrap as a nice quick and easy size comparison, you can see it, like most modern spinners in the higher end market, it's relatively small. So, let's get that out of the way. Oh, I'll tell you what I will do quickly though, I'll stick a standard stubby next to it so you get an idea next to a bar spinner. So, there we go. So what exactly is the Sonder? Well, as I say, it's a tri-spinner. It's aluminium or aluminum, depending on where you are in the world, and I think, curiously enough, I mean, the main thing that we're going to be looking at here, I suppose, is how unique this design is. But before we get to that, I've just got a little comment to make on the colour. Now, aluminium, I'm going to use the British pronunciation, why not, seeing as I'm British, generally looks something like the white portions, or the metally portions, or the white metally portions, you see here in this Van Pelt, or here on this Turnian. And basically, it's very, very light in colour. It's a very white, reflective metal. Some would say maybe it even looks maybe a smidge cheap like that. I don't think so personally, but it's very reflective and it's very distinctively white. It always looks more bright white than things like stainless steel, and certainly things like titanium have a much greyer cast to them. And this has actually been anodized. I don't know exactly how they do it, but it's been coloured effectively down to this soft sort of grey toned metallic. And I just think that works so nicely here, and it's a lovely little extra step that really pulls this together and gives it a more finished look. Now, getting on to more important things than the colour, the actual design itself. As you can see, it's really unique. There isn't anything else on the spinner market that looks quite like a Sonder. And when I first saw the pictures of these and was contacted by the maker about doing a review, I was instantly really quite interested to get my hands on this one. It has a really odd kind of bulbous look about it. As you can see, it's relatively thick, and if I take a stubby and put it next to it, as you can see that it's actually slightly thicker than a stubby, and actually quite a bit thicker than a stubby. If I try and get the angles right, maybe you'll be able to see, but just take my word for it, it's even thicker than a stubby. It's very rounded and moulded. It has that kind of sucked sweet smoothness about it, which is something that I don't think we see quite enough of in the spinner world. I really like that. But then in contrast to all this smoothness and this rounding and this polishing to all of these edges, and the fact that it has no harsh edges on it at all that you can feel at first touch, you then have these kind of angular grooves and machining cutouts here, which are super smooth still, but they give this completely different sort of more modern look to it, which is quite unique. And then you have this triangular button. Well, obviously it's circular, but you have this triangular machine cut out in the middle here, and then two lines at either side. And as we open it up, this is where it almost gets most interesting, I think, from a design point of view for anyone who's been handling spinners for a while. You can see inside there you have, again, another triangle. You have a hexagonal cut out in the centre. There's lots of open space there, and as you can actually probably see, the 608 bearing involved here, which I will get on to later. It's a 608, it's a 10 ball. What am I talking about? It's an R188. It's not a 608. That would fill most of this gap. Excuse me, I'm an idiot. Yeah, as you can see, it's actually held in 3 different points around this triangle, and that's really unique. I've not seen a spinner so far where there's areas of the actual bearing retention which aren't in contact with the bearing. I don't think it's particularly important. Most people won't care, but I just think it's quite unique and quite different and worth touching on. So, this is actually a replacement bearing. The bearing it has in here at the moment is a full stainless steel one-drop bearing, and that will come on to why I swapped it out later on, but keep that in mind. Most of what I've got to say here will be the same, but we'll get onto that in a bit. It's a super clean, de-shielded one-drop, so it's not anything like as quiet as they normally would be. But overall, the performance of this is fantastic. It feels great in hand. It weighs 40 grams, which for an aluminium spinner is relatively substantial. It's sort of more in the realms of what you might expect for a titanium spinner. Obviously, design plays into this, but a lot of titanium spinners of kind of average size are about 40 grams. But because this has got such a lot of heft to it in terms of the thickness and the overall profile, it means that it still stays at a relatively decent weight, even being aluminium. Using it, it's very, very comfortable, as you would expect. It doesn't forward flick quite as comfortably as I was expecting. There's something about this particular angle within the radius here which doesn't, for me at least, feel that comfortable when I launch it, but reverse flicks are super comfortable on this. And as you can see, it's very, very stable on a single finger. It's fairly noisy. And obviously this isn't their bearing, this is a bearing that I've installed into it myself. And installing a new bearing in this is really no trouble at all if you've got the tools and the simple sort of DIY know-how. But the original bearing that it had was obviously still an R188, but it had quite a lot of play in it, more than I'm used to nowadays for most spinners coming out of China, and it just didn't feel quite right to me. When changing direction on it, it had a sort of clicky feeling. It just wasn't quite right, and it just works better with this replacement bearing. Now, I could have got a dodgy bearing on that. I'm not going to say that that's going to happen to everyone, but equally, I think now in the spinner world, if you've been involved for a little while or anything like that, you're probably relatively comfortable and used to the idea of swapping different bearings in and out, and there's some very cheap and capable bearing removal tools, and obviously details all over the net about what forms of thread locker or Loctite to use to fit a bearing back in this sort of glued setup. But yeah, so that touches on my biggest concern with it, to be honest with you, was the bearing when it arrived. This one with a changed bearing, it's still a bit noisy, and I think that's coming from the fact that there's a lot of space around the button. I have actually tried some other buttons on here that just about fit within this gap and cover most of those hexagonal cuts that you can see, and generally speaking that seems to lower the volume. Aluminium spinners, any really light material spinner, tends to have more of a ring to it, more of a song, as Alana at Fidget Haven would say, and this one is no exception. But it's not intrusively noisy with this bearing, and it wasn't intrusively noisy with the original either. And overall, it's just very nice to use. It's very fidgety. It's super comfortable. If you're someone who doesn't want any hotspots or anything like that, then this is definitely one for you to consider. Yeah, I'm a bit scatty on this one because overall I really like the design, and there are certain small things about the execution which maybe I don't love. But by and large, I'm happy to recommend it. I think it's very, very nice. And if you really like the design, I think the drawbacks won't really matter a great deal to you. So there you go. That is the Sonder by Vinon Labs. Just about got that right, I hope. And yeah, this one comes with a recommendation, but with a few caveats for if you really don't like particularly noisy spinners, fine, and don't expect the forward flick to maybe be as comfortable as some, but it's not uncomfortable to any degree. So, less rambling, more finishing. Catch you at the next video, guys. Take care.